Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to the Authoritas Tea Time SEO. I'm SEO Joe Blogs, and I'm also here joined by Carrie Shepherd from Authoritas. So we've organizing this Tea Time SEO now on Thursdays and Mondays. And just one moment. And today we have three great speakers sharing their insights about going head-to-head in a competitive niche, and James and Jason Barnard. And we have Tea Time SEO. So does everyone have their cup of tea here ready, or coffee?
Cup of coffee.
Cup of coffee, very good. And we actually have, it's an international Tea Time SEO today. We've got Francis coming in from Nottingham, Francois from Turin, Carrie's dialed in from Putney, I'm in Barcelona, and Jason's coming in from Montpellier. So without further ado, I'd like to pass over to them, who will then introduce themselves. And if you have any questions, please drop them in the chat, and Carrie will pick up the questions later on today. So over to you, Francois.
Hi, everyone, and welcome. So I am François Georges from Belgium, currently based in Torino. I'm a SEO specialist, and I've been working for TalkWalker for the last 4 years in the demand generation team. TalkWalker is a social media listening and analytics company. I've been doing SEO for the last 12 years, and I'm currently collaborating with a team of 13 writers. I also run some ads as a freelance using Google AdWords, and I'm a member of the Google Partners program. I actually started SEO to help a friend to get more booking for his juggling show, and 12 years later, he's now managing different artists at initiationcirque.be. In my spare time, I like to play table tennis, to bike, and to run.
My name is Frances Brown. I'm originally from Ireland, but I'm now based in Nottingham and in the UK. And I run Nightingale Design Research. We were formerly Folum, and we just recently rebranded, which has been fun to do during a pandemic. But anyway, my background is that I trained as a psychologist a long time ago. And what we do is that we use qualitative and quantitative research to enable companies to make evidence-based decisions. So if they need to understand their users, their business model, how their product needs to function, we carry out that research for them to help them ensure that they get ahead of their competitors, basically. So we work with a very wide range of companies, and we work with government departments as well here in the UK. So my expertise is in understanding people and how to design for their needs. And in terms of SEO, my approach is about trying to make sure that people choose and search for your content because it's what they need, and it fulfills a goal or helps them to complete a task for them. I like getting the meaning out of rich, detailed data and feeding it into the design process. So it's a matter of understanding the situation and then trying to develop recommendations or give a way forward from that data. And that's just our website at the bottom there if you would like to take a look. Over to you, Jason.
Thank you very much, Francis. I'm Jason Barnard, the Brand SERP Guy. I've been doing this for far too long. I collect brand SERPs. I've got a couple of million in a database using Authoritas' wonderful API for scraping these results off the internet. As far as I know, I'm the only person who specializes in exact match brand SERPs and what comes up and why they're important, how you can improve them. I teach that on a set of brand SERP courses. I've released 2 so far, 3 being released in the next few months. Go along to calicube.pro if you want to learn more about that. I've got a great podcast, live streaming every Tuesday with some groovy guests. So search for that if you're interested. And every now and then, if I really have to make some money, I do some consulting. But if I can avoid it, I always try.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Jason, and welcome everyone that's joined us today. If you're enjoying what you're seeing, like our video and subscribe to the Authoritas YouTube channel. I'll pass you over to Francois, who will be sharing his tips about competing in a competitive market. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. So my first tip is that you can always find new profitable keywords. For example, if I will start with an example. If I say electric car, which brand do you think of first? It would be great if you could let me know in the chat. So
I put Toyota.
Great.
Because I know it's not the right answer.
Exactly. Thank you, Jason. So as you can imagine, the most common answer to this question is Tesla. So it means that Tesla wins the top of mind awareness race. Let's check this with some data. So if you use a social media listening or analytics tool, you can basically see that on Twitter, Tesla is the most associated brand with the term electric car. So you can see on the picture on the left, I typed electric car in TalkWalker quick search, and you see basically that the brands, the most common brands associated to that term, electric car, are basically Tesla and Tesla Motors. Those data are based on the last 13 months. And you can see the details on the right side in the little table there. And you can basically see the total mentioned for Tesla Motors and Tesla. And you can see that together they are far better than Volkswagen and Porsche. Then another way to look at this is basically to type electric car in Google Trends. There at the bottom of the page, you can actually see the related queries. And if you check those queries, you see that the first branch which appear in this listing is basically Tesla. So Tesla, Tesla car, and Tesla electric car. So then I actually wanted to check something, and I wanted to see as a SEO, of course, how is Tesla performing on Google for electric car? Because I wanted to know what was happening there. And basically, I had a nice surprise on first on google.fr, where I could see that basically Tesla is of course ranking first for Tesla keyword, so for the brand keyword. However, I didn't see them on the first page of Google for voiture électrique or voiture électrique, the plural version, which means electric car in French. And then I start to go down, and I saw that basically they were quite far, and that basically Peugeot and Renault were actually enjoying the place. Then I actually checked on google.co.uk using Authoritas, and in the keyword results, the position results, I could see that there again, Tesla was not on the first page of Google for electric cars. Basically, Nissan.co.uk is better positioned than Tesla for electric car, which is quite surprising. Then I did the same research on google.com with a country based on US. And there again, Ford is actually before Tesla for the keyword electric car, which is quite surprising. So basically, what I wanted to show you with this example is that even if you're already doing super well on one keyword, and if you're already the best brand associated to one keyword, it doesn't mean that on Google it will be the same. And you should definitely check other type of queries to see if you could basically position your brand on those keywords. Then my second tip is basically that, as you know, in SEO, you need great content, but you also need strong backlinks. And basically, backlinks can make a difference. A nice way to basically get new backlinks is to set up alerts based on your brand or based on your product's names. You can do it using TalkWalker Alerts, it's free, or also Google Alerts. And then you just need to type the keywords or the name of the brand, and you will get an email every day with all the mention of your brand. You can do it for your brand, for products, etc. And the good thing with that is you get the link directly to the page, and you can click on it and see if you got a backlink on that page or not. If you only got the mention, you can reach out to the author of the blog and ask for the backlink. And of course, you can also do it based on your competitor's name, and you can reach out and say, listen, we also produce an electric car. Maybe you should mention our brand as well. And on the left side, so basically, it's an example of the email that you can get based on the Authoritas keyword. And you can see that the content is actually associated with SEO tools. Then my third tip is basically to set up automated reports. It's a very basic tip, but as soon as you want to know what's going on the SERP, on the search engine result page, you should basically track your keywords on a daily basis. And in this example, you can see the position on one day for Tesla, Ford, and NissanUSA.com, for example. And this also comes from Authoritas. Then my fourth tip is, of course, don't forget SEO Basics. If you look at the homepage of Tesla, they've actually included electric cars in the main keyword. I mean, in the page title, which of course is a good practice. But the main keyword of the page is Tesla. But as you know, because they are Tesla, they don't need to write a lot of content about Tesla to be ranked as the first result. Then, of course, they've added Tesla in the H1, but they could have also included electric cars, of course. In the content, of course, there is almost no text on this page. And yes, you should never forget to write an appealing meta description. All this to say that basically Tesla is very easily ranked for electric car or voiture électrique, but because of the content they are currently using, they are not there. Then my fifth tip is about basically checking your AdWords auction reports, because in those reports you can really see how well you are doing versus your competitors. I mean, the other competitors which are bidding for electric car. And we can see that Tesla is not bidding on electric car or voiture électrique in any countries. But you can see that, for example, Nissan, Opel, Hyundai, and Mercedes are doing it. So as a summary, of course, as you know, Tesla is super strong on its brand name, and that's probably the reason why they've been ignoring valuable keywords such as electric car. However, I think as a web marketer, this is a great opportunity for the competitors to get traffic on a very valuable keyword as well. It could be using SEO or also using paid ads. So as a recap, so my 5 tips, the first one is that you can always find new profitable keyword, even if you're in a very competitive market. The second one is that, as you know, backlinks can make the difference. So you should definitely set up free alerts. It's free. And the third tip is that you should set up automated reports to see the evolution of your position versus your competitors. The first one is don't forget SEO basics. And the fifth one is check AdWords auction reports.
I'll take over. Thanks, Francois. That was really interesting. So I come at the whole SEO thing from a different point of view. I'm not an SEO expert. I'm a research and specifically design research expert. So when we're working with companies to help them understand how to get ahead of the competition, we will always first urge them to understand why their users come to their site in the first place. Google has put more emphasis on this over the last number of years, and they've always put emphasis on usability, on user experience, and to an extent on accessibility as well, although I think their emphasis could be stronger on that. But they haven't really explicitly said that if your site does what it needs to do for your users and your customers, then by default, it is a site that they will use. So what we always say to companies is that users come to your site to complete a task or to solve a problem they have. They're there to do something for their own benefit, essentially. And if your site allows them to do that, then they will come back, they'll remember you, and they'll recommend you. And while it's always worth trying to get ahead in terms of keywords and searches, that more organic way of getting further up on the rankings where you're actually delivering what people need and therefore they are passing your name on, recommending you, is also worth doing. Even though it is a slower burn, it has a more stable return in the long run. And it doesn't require you to be constantly monitoring. It means that you're delivering and you get a reputation, and a good reputation, and a good reputation serves you well. So understanding your users by talking to them, carrying out research, testing their pages. Does your content answer their questions? Can users do everything they need to do? They seem like simple questions, but when we do work through this with companies, what we'll often find is that there are gaps. So especially if you are focusing very much on delivering a very specific thing to customers, you will find that if you do talk to your customers, talk to your users, there will be elements that you've not thought of. And of course, if there are elements that you've not thought of, it's likely that there are elements that your competitors have not thought of either. And therefore, that is potentially an empty space that you can grab. And it's quite common that there is quite a yawning empty space that you can grab. And especially in a competitive market, that really gives you an advantage. The benefit as well of being in a competitive niche market is that often that audience is quite specific. So they will be looking for very specific things. They will have very specific questions. They will need a very specific type of help or type of service. And therefore, if you know all of that in detail, you can deliver things that potentially your competitors are not delivering, and therefore grab their attention through solid content, through fulfilling a task for them that others don't fulfill for them, just by delivering in a way that your competitors don't deliver. And often these things are not necessarily massive changes and massive improvements. They can be relatively small, relatively simple. Answering one quite simple question that no one else answers can put you ahead of the competition in quite a serious way. So a simple way to test your site, if you are doing it as a whole, is to run a cognitive walkthrough with someone who isn't familiar with it. And that's quite important, is to have someone who doesn't know your site very well, because there is someone who will then have to come to it fresh and not necessarily know exactly how it works. I mean, a key part of that process is that your whole site has to work together as a coherent whole. Pages need to move on one from the other. You're trying to protect against people bouncing off from one page because there isn't a coherent way for them to move from one page to another. A cognitive walkthrough, it's a fancy way of saying basically just sitting someone in front of your website and saying, do this or find this or complete this task. And you sit with the person, they talk through the process, and they verbalize everything that they're going through. So they read a piece of text and they let you know if they understand it. If there's a point at which they become confused, then that is the point at which a lot of your users are going to bounce off the page, because they've gotten to a point and they can't get any further. They don't understand what you're saying. They can't complete the task. They don't know where to go next. So the process identifies difficulties, gaps, missing information, technical issues, and gives you an overall idea of how well your website serves your users. It also lets you identify where you could add a new page, but where a person says, if you're doing a cognitive walkthrough with them and they say, oh, actually, the next thing I would look for is X, then you say, okay, well, I can add that page. And then other users may also want to look for that information. You may be leading them through your website in a more coherent way. So we'll go on to the next slide. So understanding your users also lets you know how they think and talk about your product. And again, in a niche market, and especially a competitive market, that can be a very valuable source of improving your content and by default improving your SEO, because you will understand what prompts them to search for your product or your service. What way do they talk about it? What questions do they ask? What words do they use? Because if you are a person working in the industry, you may have language that your users don't use. So, for example, I was talking to someone recently, even financial services, and the issue that we often have when we're working with companies that do financial services is they're steeped in financial language. They don't understand that. People don't necessarily understand APR. What does that mean in terms of how interest works on a loan, for example? Understanding what the language is that users are coming to your site and meeting them where they are, rather than talking from your own expertise and talking from your own language, can often just be a very simple way to help to draw people in and give them the answers they need. It lets you identify content that makes you stand out from your competitors. If you answer your users' questions, they will notice you. Again, financial services is a very good example there, because Martin Lewis has been very successful in the area of financial services in the UK. I'm sure he's possibly well known elsewhere, but it's especially in the UK. And his approach is being simple and straightforward. And it isn't rocket science. It's just answering questions that people have. And it's not talking about APR and compound interest. It's talking about how do you make more money when you're in a certain situation that really relates to how people feel. And it lets you identify simple, easy ways in which you can differentiate from your competition that you may not have realized before. Essentially, when we work with companies, often what they'll say is, why didn't I think of that? And the reason they didn't think of it is because they didn't try to think of it. It's just sitting down and going, okay, but if a person comes to this site, what might they be looking for? What are the gaps in their knowledge? What could we provide them that makes them come to us over and above our competitors? And usually it's about making them feel like they're getting the right sort of information, answering the questions that they've had, making them feel more knowledgeable depending on the situation, and making them trust in you and make you feel like you understand where they're coming from. That's it from me. I'll hand over to Jason.
Brilliant stuff. I thought it was great. Thank you very much. The thing you were saying about saying stuff to your clients and saying, well, why didn't you do that? And they go, oh, yeah, of course. I tell my clients when I try and sign them up, when I'm pitching, I'm going to sell you the bleeding obvious for a lot of money. And they love it, because when I say something, the idea is if I say something to you, if it isn't obvious, if it isn't something that you then think, oh, yeah, of course I have to do that, then I've probably misunderstood your business model, in which case I need to rethink about how I'm approaching it. And a lot of what we're doing, whether it's Francois, Frances, or myself, is good common sense in terms of what you were saying, Frances, helping Google to make sure that it satisfies its own users with quality content that's valuable and relevant for them. And so I've kind of approached this from a more global perspective, less the blue links and much more universal search. And I was looking at this from a perspective of how can I identify what the ecosystem of an industry is in terms of the SERP makeup, the search engine results pages. And what I found is if you track entities, an entity is a brand or a product or a person, then you get a very clear view of what kind of things you're aiming at, especially in terms of universal search. And one of those things is all those rich elements, the SERP features, incredible opportunities for branding, for getting out there. They're taking over from blue links, or let's say 30% of a lot of SERPs are rich elements, SERP features, video, images, Twitter boxes, knowledge panels. You have to get your place there. And here's the nice trick that I discovered while thinking about this over the weekend. I looked at my collection of 2 million brand SERPs. What appears when somebody Googles your brand name? And I broke it down into some niche markets. I mean, I just picked them completely at random to see how much the dominant rich elements vary. And if you look here, I can't actually see it, it's very small. Data management within computers and electronics, enterprise technology. Knowledge graphs are incredibly important. Something like 80% of brands have knowledge graphs. So if you don't have a knowledge graph and you're in a specific English industry and everyone else does, you're at a disadvantage, because Google is today talking about entity-based search, and having a knowledge panel shows that it's understood your brand as an entity, what you do, who you are, and what you do. People also ask, also entity-based. It can't put those if it hasn't understood who you are as an entity. Videos, rich site links. People also search for another entity-based element within the SERP. So as I keep repeating this, entity, you need to be understood by Google as an entity. An entity is a thing, a named thing that it can recognize. And it can start building up an appreciation of who you are, what you do, and who you can serve, which was Francis's point. Who you can serve, who you're going to be useful for, who can you solve problems for. And if you look at that, obviously you're going to want to, in this particular industry, be focusing on videos more than images, but images still. And if we look at the next one, oh, that's an example of a SERP on the left. I just picked one at random. And it's so tiny you can't see, but what you can see is how rich they've become. I mean, in this one, we've got video boxes, we've got maps, we've got knowledge panels, we've got news, I think, in there in the middle, although you can't see it. And in this particular industry, coffee and tea, that's Starbucks on the left, you can't see it. But people also ask, incredibly important, you need to be focusing on that because they're going to keep appearing within your industry because Google has understood you and your industry and what you do. Knowledge panels, important, less so than in the last one. Images, more important than video this time. So if you're in that industry, you might want to say, well, obviously images for tea and coffee are more important than videos. Next slide. Please. You didn't change it because I didn't say please. I'll remember for the next time. Medical procedures, once again, picked completely at random. We've got a SERP on the right. That's a lovely SERP. And I find myself embarrassed to be saying that's a beautiful SERP. But I think we're all starting to say, as they get richer with all these elements in, we're starting to have this kind of approach to it. And universal search, I find it really exciting as opportunities. And within this one, you can see that the amount of rich elements, the number of SERP features is much lower than the previous two. Still looking at knowledge panels, which are pretty much fairly present across all these industries. We also see people also ask, also present across many industries. Videos, images, once again, people also search for and news there. You might want to look into news. Where do you appear in the news? Because within medical procedures, logically, news comes up quite a lot. Next slide, please. Last one, writing and editing services. The categorization is Google's official categorization from their NLP API. So I'm categorizing as Google categorize. Here we're looking at writing and editing services, and we can see that knowledge panels suddenly not so very important. So you don't really need to worry about it right now, but it's certainly an advantage if nobody else has them for that entity-based search idea to get your knowledge panel today. Videos are important, images much less so logically. So conclusion of all that is look at your industry and what rich elements, SERP features tend to appear within your industry and focus on those and you build them up. And how do you build these rich elements? It's great content on your site for people also ask, for example, but videos, it's putting videos out that are useful and relevant and valuable to your audience, and it doesn't have to be on your site. It can be on YouTube, it can be on Facebook, it can be on Twitter, it can be any of these platforms. Images, the same thing. It doesn't have to be on your site. It can be on other sites, and you can get that presence, in this case, on your brand SERP by distributing that content. And as we'll see, coming back to the end, this isn't a useless opportunity that doesn't actually pay. Next slide, please. A quick note on the right rail, I think we tend to forget it. We've got the left rail, which is the blue links with all the rich elements mixed in, and the right rail is knowledge. It's Google saying, here's some facts, the knowledge panel, the local business listing, or the C results about. And an astonishing figure came out of the research I was doing. 76% of brand SERPs, when you search for an exact match brand name in niche markets, that happens an awful lot. Tesla must rely an awful lot on people searching their brand name. What comes up there is phenomenally important to their bottom line because those people know they want Tesla. They're just ready to convert. You have to convince them. 76% of brand SERPs contain something on the right rail. That's the right-hand side. A knowledge panel, 56%. 25% local business listings, 27% contain C results about, which mini knowledge panels, they link through to knowledge panel results. Now, you'll notice that adds up to over 100%. It just means that there are multiple elements a lot of the time. So it's not either or. It's one of these and possibly other ones. And on the right, you can see that NTT Communications, which is a client of mine. They've got the knowledge panel, they've got a local business, and they've got the C results about. That's a triple filling of that right-hand rail. And it's almost as long as the left-hand rail. So it fills up almost as much space on that SERP when you search their brand name. Next slide, please. Brilliant. And then you can take that further. You can expand that out. Branded product SERPs. So whatever product you have, once again, in a niche market, people will tend to search or will search a lot for specific products. In this example, I happen to have car brands in my database. My database tracks entities. It's primarily brands, but also products. And this is what appears for car brands. Incredibly rich, much richer than the ones we had before. Lots of video, lots of people also ask. People are very curious. They want questions answered. As Francis said, answer those questions. You'll get the traffic. Lots of images, cars, brilliant. You need images. You've got some videos. You've got loads of news, or relatively more news, excuse me. Oh, and I can't see the last one because, there's a pointer on that. And featured snippets, brilliant. So if you're Tesla, you would want to focus on the elements that appear around your brand name and around brand names of your competitors, and also the products within that industry. Here you're looking at news. You want to push that news out. You want to make videos. I suspect they probably don't. On the right there, it's some car. I can't remember what car it was. Ford Fiesta, that's right. Very rich SERP, very long, very full, loads of opportunities. Next slide, excuse me, please. And then I want to push it onto generic product names, but I haven't got to that point. Now, everything I've with generic product names, obviously it's like electric cars, you were saying, Francois. There are a great many opportunities for rich elements like videos and images and news to get that place on the SERP without banging on going for those blue links. And it gets you that top and middle of funnel visibility for your brand in universal search. And you'll get blue links. If you create quality content for users that's valuable to them, you will get not only the places in the SERP features, but also the blue links. And if you do the work to improve your universal search for brand SERPs and your branded product SERPs, what are you going to have to do? You're going to have to create videos. You're going to have to create news. You're going to have to create images. You're going to have to push them out there. You're going to have to answer questions that your clients have got around your product and around the type of product that you're selling. You're going to have to create that knowledge graph. And guess what? All of that will appear in these generic product searches without you having to do anything extra. You've got a big head start. So focus on your brand, your product, create that valuable content, push it out there, get it onto your product SERPs and your brand SERPs, and the generic product SERPs will also move forward at the same time. And it will make it much easier for your example, Tesla, to nail a great place with a video, an image, or a blue link on that generic term, electric cars. If you want to track them, you want to track an entity, I track lots of brands, but you can track products, you can track people, you can track music groups, because I was in a music group, so I track my music group. You can track cartoon characters, I'm tracking some of those. And you can track events as well. Events are great for knowledge graph. It's free. And the idea is that I collect lots and lots of data because I want to learn more. And that's in association with Authoritas, WordLift, and my company, Calicube.pro. Thank you very much. I'm a bit breathless.
Thank you very much, Jason. Loads of tips and advice from Francis, Francois, and Jason. You can connect with them on Twitter here, but we've got a couple of questions. I think we've got time for just one each. So I'll pass over to Carrie.
Great, thank you, Joe. So we have one question for Francois. You talked about setting up alerts to generate potential backlinks. You said this works well for secondary keywords. Can you share an example where you saw more traffic off the back of setting up alerts and using the secondary terms instead of your main keywords?
Yes, so basically, let's say, for example, Tesla, of course, they could try to rank for electric car, so they could eventually monitor the keyword electric car or the brand name. But for example, they could also have other keywords such as Tesla battery, the chargers, etc. So you could also monitor all those keywords and be alerted when some people are speaking about it. And if you think that this blog has a good potential in terms of reach, then you should try to be included there.
Great, thank you. And for Francis, you mentioned a simple way to test your site is to run a cognitive walkthrough with someone who isn't familiar with it. What kind of results did you see from this walkthrough?
It depends on the site very much, whether it's a site that's mainly for marketing or whether you have tasks or a way for people to interact with the site. Generally, what you're looking for is anything at all that could be standing in the way of your users really engaging with the site. And it can be really simple things like the button doesn't make sense, or I can't fill my email address in here because it's giving me an error message, so from bugs up to and including content that doesn't quite make sense. So you're not using the right words, or someone reads a name of a blog and they read it out and they say, what does that mean? And you realize actually you're using an industry or a technical word that people don't understand, and maybe you need to rename it so that it actually fits with what people are likely to be searching for. So it uncovers all sorts of things, really, from, like I say, from the technical up to and including content where someone says, I'd really love a blog post about something to do with X because it would really help. And that's a piece of content that is directly requested from your users. So you're pretty sure that that's actually going to hit the spot with them, and it's going to be something that other users are likely to look for as well. You can expand and maybe do a greater amount of research with a larger number of users to see if that is actually something they're interested in as well. So you can go from a very small, quick cognitive walkthrough with one person up to doing 10 or more people, or do a survey where you look at lots of different people and what they're interested in. But it's the more you can get to understand your users, basically, the more you're going to deliver what they need.
Great, thank you. That's really interesting. And we have a final question for Jason. What actions have you done off the back of the SERP study for your site or those of your clients?
Well, the creation of videos and answering questions has been phenomenally successful. Specifically answering questions, I have a client, they've got a lovely hockey stick going on because they're answering questions around their brand. So they're dominating, people also ask around their brand, but they're also dominating feature snippets, people also ask, and the blue links around the topic with very specific answers to very specific questions. And it adds up very quickly, surprisingly quickly. They're getting 600 or 700 visits a month from an FAQ section where they were getting none 6 months ago because they had it as an accordion system. We split it into pages and addressed, as Francis was saying, the questions that people are truly asking. And for videos and images, in fact, I've been doing an experiment on my own Brand SERP and my own company Brand SERP. And by creating quality videos, quality images, I can get those images and videos to push up onto my Brand SERP, other people's Brand SERPs, but also more general SERPs, and also rank in YouTube and pull people into my brand message, which is Brand SERPs, through all these different channels. And I think we tend to forget as SEOs that, I would say I create the videos because I think they will pay for themselves on their own, standalone on YouTube or wherever I might be putting them. Any SEO bonus is a bonus, which is what I just said. Any SEO traffic is a bonus.
That's great, thank you. And thank you all for joining us today. Those are all the questions we have time for today. Back over to Joe. You're muted, Joe.
Okay. Thanks everyone for joining us today, and thanks very much for your tips. Impressive results there, Jason, for what you were saying. Obviously doing a study and then implementing what you found and then getting quite a huge, significant number of visits, which is good.
Yep. The images, I actually realized that my visuals were awful, and I got a proper graphic designer to do them all again. And it was like 250 images. And within 3 months, they're absolutely everywhere on the web. It's astonishing. So quality images, well worth doing. Sorry.
No, that's good. So yeah, it just requires a bit of time, I suppose, time or resource, and then in the end, you will find the difference. So thank you very much to Francois, Francis, and Jason for being on Tea Time SEO today. We're back this Thursday to learn about CMS, the content management system of a WordPress. I'm sure many of you know about WordPress, but really, is it the best CMS to use? Well, we're going to be speaking to Nikki and Marco, and potentially one more. So join us 4 p.m. on this Thursday. And if you'd like to get involved in being on stage like Francois, Frances, and Jason, then talk to us. Talk to Carrie. She has been sending out many emails about the agenda. We've got a couple of places for next Monday and next Thursday. Well, we'll see you on Thursday. Until then, have a good week.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.